Are we live?
We're live.
Great. Well, it always takes a minute before everybody can join us, but hi, welcome to our third annual Shakespeare live stream. Shakespeare's birthday and death date are both in the same week, and so Professor Adam Hooks and I, Colleen Tyson from Special Collections, are back again this year to answer your questions live, and we have a few surprises up our sleeve this year as well. Adam, do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Adam G. Hooks. You can find me on Twitter at Adam G. Hooks. I teach Shakespeare in the English department and the Center for the Book here at the University of Iowa. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about Shakespeare, about books, about Shakespeare and books, about the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death, and anything else that comes to mind.
And we are live with all that entails. So I hope that you are excited for everything that this next 3 hours might bring. This is the hashtag SHX Live. And so if you have questions for us at any time, just use the hashtag on Twitter. You can type your questions right into this live stream and I'll be moderating that. You can type it on our Facebook page. And anywhere, we'll take a look, we'll find your questions, we'll get you answers. So while I prepare to take a look at our feeds and get started on the questions, I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself as well. My name is Colleen Tyson, and I'm an outreach and engagement librarian in Special Collections here at the University of Iowa. So we have Shakespearean answers for you today, and we also have selections of historic Shakespeare materials from Special Collections on hand today. We have guests on hand today, one of whom just walked into the room, which includes Cutting Quills with Heather Bain, who just walked in the room. Hi, Heather. Hi. And yeah, we have a lot in store for you today. We have also divided today's live stream into topics for our own information, half an hour long topics where we have some information that we can regale you with throughout the live stream as well. And so ask your questions at any time, but we've also got some things that we can bring to you.
Indeed, we do. The first half hour, I wanted to talk, we have some things here to show you about Shakespeare's birthday, Shakespeare's death day, Shakespeare's life, Shakespeare's biography. Shak's live. I want to show you straight away Nicholas Rowe's 1709 edition of Shakespeare, which I'm going to hold up in a manner that will not make our Special Collections librarian freak out. There's the nice frontispiece to the title page. Nicholas Rowe's edition was the first of many multi-volume editions of Shakespeare's works in the 18th century, after they stopped producing folio versions. And it was also the first proper biography of Shakespeare, some account of the life and writings, etc., of William Shakespeare. Versions of this biography were reprinted in many of the 18th century editions, and so it was one of the more accessible versions of Shakespeare's life for a very long time. Nicholas Rowe felt like he had to justify doing so, and he did that by saying that you could come to a better understanding of Shakespeare's books, of Shakespeare's plays, by having a brief account of his life. It hasn't held up terribly well because because standards of biography were very different in the 18th century, and so that it's filled with a lot of analysis of the plays, with what we now consider to be myths and legends, but which at the time were perfectly reasonable stories that circulated about Shakespeare. And part of my work in particular has to do with taking those a lot more seriously than some people often have. We also have in Special Collections the second edition of Rowe's edition of Shakespeare, 1714, in a much smaller format. So mostly the same content. very different formats. Slightly larger here, and this is the kind of thing that you could carry around and read much more conveniently if that's what you were wanting to do. So that's just to start us off there with a brief account of the first account of Shakespeare's life and writings.
I am just checking in on the questions now. And I mean, we have had a few come in so far, but just to catch you up if you're just joining our live stream. So we are answering any questions about Shakespeare, Shakespeare-related things, being a Shakespeare scholar, working with Shakespeare-related materials in a library setting like a university here, or your favorite plays, your least favorite plays, adaptations, any of the above. If you have questions, I'll make this better, a little more into the live stream, but here is our hashtag SHXLive, and you can ask us your questions on Twitter. You can ask us in the feed for the live stream and ask your questions, and we'll get you answers live.
Excellent. I have one other thing to say by way of starting off, and I'm going to tweet out a couple of links for you all in just a second. Colleen mentioned that Shakespeare's birthday and Shakespeare's death day are in the same week. It's often thought that it's the same day, which is April 23rd, which is tomorrow. That's certainly when he died, but we have no idea when he was actually born. We only have a record of his baptism from April 26th, and you can see that record on the new website Shakespeare Documented, which collects together this amazing trove of archival evidence with brief essays. And so if you want to see the record of Shakespeare's baptism, you can go to Shakespeare Documented, and you'll have a lovely explanation of some of the information that we have about baptisms in Stratford, about how they usually occurred a few days after a child was born. It's been conventional since the 18th century or so to state that Shakespeare was born on the same day he died, which is very convenient. It's also the day of St. George, England's patron saint, so that's awfully convenient in a variety of circumstances. The next thing I'll tweet out is a record of Shakespeare's, you know what? I tweeted out Shakespeare's baptism. It's actually his burial entry. I think that's kind of part of the point. Go to either one of those. We have further evidence that the age that Shakespeare is attributed on his monument. If Shakespeare was born on the same day that he died, he probably died, he must have been born early on that day. So it's probably more likely that he was born a few days earlier. But at any rate, it's all in the same week, so we're fine either way celebrating.
Would you like to take a question?
Yes, do we have a question?
Well, our very first question is one that came in on Tumblr. It's, well, I'd like to see what you do with it, because basically the question is, could you please talk about Titus Andronicus? Specifically, seriously, what the heck is the deal with Titus Andronicus?
I love this question so much. What is the deal?
What is the deal is the question that came to us from I'll Be Dancing With Myself on Tumblr.
I'll be dancing with myself. Here are a few things that we can learn about Titus Andronicus. I'm not going to explain the whole thing for you, but we can have a few things here. So Titus Andronicus is the famously bloody play from early in Shakespeare's career. If you want a pop culture reference to this, it's sometimes thought of as the Tarantino version of Shakespeare. There's a lot of violence, a lot of blood, It seems like an Shakespearean tragedy. That's how it's often thought to be. A kind of early apprentice work when he's still figuring out how to write the tragedies that everyone actually likes. I happen to like Titus Andronicus a lot. We think that it was probably a collaborative play, which means Shakespeare wrote some of it, but not all of it, as was extraordinarily common in the early modern theater and in Shakespeare's career as well. It's really an interesting play because it is based in some of the Ovidian sources that Shakespeare used for his early narrative poems, Venus and Adonis and Lucrece, to the extent that a copy of Ovid is brought on stage at a certain point and discussed explicitly. So this is one of the moments where Shakespeare seems to be acknowledging one of the sources that was extremely important to him. It does appear in the first folio, but in the 18th century, it was often thought to be so un-Shakespearean because of the content that it was relegated to the end of the multi-volume editions, banished from the canon in a certain sense, because it didn't fit the version of Shakespeare that 18th century editors wanted to propagate. This kind of bloody entertainer, on the early modern stage with a lot of spectacle. The other thing I will say is that it was a very popular play in print and in performance. Ooh.
I didn't mean to distract you from Titus Andronicus and answering our first question, what is the deal? But Heather Bain, secretly and sneakily right behind the camera, has made us a beautiful version of our hashtag. So this is our hashtag for today's live stream. Just use SHX Live, Shakes Live, and ask your questions on Twitter or type them right into the comments on the live stream, and we'll get your questions answered live.
Awesome.
Sorry, you were still on. What's the deal?
What's the deal? I'll say just a couple of other quick things about Titus Andronicus. It was very popular on stage to the extent that some other playwrights maybe chafed at its popularity. I'm looking at you, Ben Johnson. The other thing is, and I'll try to find a version of this in just a second and tweet it out for you all after I finish talking here. There was a ballad of Titus Andronicus made. The printer of Titus Andronicus, John Danter, has always thought to have been, it's always been characterized as the worst printer of Shakespeare. But in fact, he was very astute as a printer and publisher. He also printed the first quarto of Romeo and Juliet. And one of the things that he also did was printed many, many ballads. The only version of a ballad that he printed that's still extant is Titus Andronicus, although we don't have one as early as the 1590s. So what he would do is print a play or print a pamphlet and then also print a ballad version of that. So you can go online to the English Broadside Ballad Archive project and listen to a version of Titus Andronicus sung by a contemporary ballad singer. And it's really fantastic. And in some ways, even more gruesome than the play because it's written in the first person. And so Titus has to sing through his own death, which is a pretty awesome stanza. So in that sense, Titus was a multimedia event. There's a fantastic illustration for the ballad that tells the entire story of the play. So this is a multimedia version that was extraordinarily popular. It's just that 18th century editors and possibly some people still today don't think that it's properly Shakespearean. I say it's quintessentially Shakespearean in a whole bunch of different ways. So I'm going to find...
So I'll be dancing with myself on Tumblr. We will follow up and post the link to that ballad on our Tumblr. If I can't get to it simultaneously in the live stream, I'll follow up with a link to that on our Tumblr following the live stream today.
And as Rachel just pointed out on Twitter, hi Rachel, it's good to see you again, only virtually. that the Folger Shakespeare Library possesses the only known copy of the first quarto of Titus Andronicus, which has a fabulous backstory. Let me just tweet out this link. It was found in the early 20th century, wrapped in a Swedish lottery ticket, and at the Folger's website you can still see the digitization of that Swedish lottery ticket. And as soon as Mr. Henry Folger heard about it, he immediately began negotiations to purchase this.
I love collection items that come in unusual packaging.
Exactly. I mean, it really was like hitting the lottery, right?
Definitely.
All right. Let's find that ballad for you all.
Just checking up on the live stream, all of our question feeds right now. So if you do have a question that you want to ask us live, I know I've said this several times, but we have people joining us and leaving all the time. This is our hashtag, beautifully written by Heather Bain, who's joining us very shortly as a guest. SHX Live on Twitter, or type into our live stream on YouTube, the Google Hangout, and we can look for your questions there as well. And we'll be here until 1:30 answering your questions live.
So I have one follow-up to Titus. Rachel Clark up at Wartburg College right here in Iowa, hello Rachel, asks, Danter is the worst printer, but do you have a favorite Shakespeare stationer? I would say that Danter is one of my very favorite stationers. He's always been labeled as the worst printer, but that's just because he produced the first quarto of Romeo and Juliet, which used to be called one of the bad quartos. And when they found the copy of Titus Andronicus early in the 20th century, the first time anyone had found that quarto, so he was responsible for a bad quarto and then also a bad play. So that hasn't played well for John Danter. But he was one of the most famous stationers of the time, so famous, in fact, that he appeared on stage in a play performed at Cambridge, known to be a person who would print popular pamphlets, cheap and popular pamphlets of the time. So, in fact, Danter is one of the great stationers of Shakespeare's time. If I have a favorite Shakespeare stationer, I'm gonna have to go with Richard Field, although I have a long and complicated relationship with Richard Field. But I've written about him extensively in a variety of venues before, so I'm not gonna rehearse any of that. But I'll just leave it at that, Rachel.
Now, when you use the word, because you use printer and stationer both when you were talking, what sort of a distinction are you making between printer and stationer?
Good question. So printer and publisher and bookseller, those are three distinct roles, and some of those terms were used interchangeably at the time. They didn't necessarily think of them as discrete jobs in the way that we think about those now. A printer, a publisher, and a bookseller. The printer's in charge of actually making the book, of printing the pages. The publisher is where the money's at. They're the sponsor of the entire venture. They put up the capital to produce the book. The bookseller is the person, obviously, who sells the books, either wholesale or retail. Sometimes all three jobs were performed by the same person. Sometimes it was three different people. There are multiple combinations there. Stationer is the word that we use for all of those people involved in the book trade writ large. It could simply be someone who was a bookseller, or just a printer, or a printer and a publisher, or a printer, publisher, and bookseller. But the stationer's company is the guild for the book trade, one that wielded a lot of power. So, for instance, John Danter also has had a bad reputation because he did get in trouble, had his press seized at a certain point. And so he ran afoul of company practices from time to time, admittedly, but so did most other stationers, I have to say.
Great. Well, for those of you just tuning in, this is a station break where I remind you of the hashtag SHXLive, and do ask your questions on Twitter or in our live stream feed. We had a question come in from Lincoln himself on Twitter, Sarah Werner, who asked hard ones for you that I'm going to save for just a minute. But she asked an easy one for me, which was simply, what is my favorite Shakespeare item in special collections? Well, I think I have actually shown my favorite Shakespeare item before in one of these live streams. I think I showed it in the first year, and I can't show it today. I can't show it today because we have the first folio exhibition coming from the Folger Shakespeare Library in the fall, and it is getting a conservation treatment right now, so I wasn't able to bring it down. But my favorite Shakespeare item in the collection is from the early 20th century. It's a little spinning bookcase that has the complete works of Shakespeare, and they're about this big each, and I'm a sucker for small, and I like things that are complete. And I love the physicality of it. I love that you can have it, that you can turn it, to that. And it is big enough to read it. It's not so small as to be completely useless, which some of them, the more decorative ones, the micro minis, you know, they get so small that they're really just about being an object. But they're still a size that can be used. And I just love it. I love it from its little bookshelf to its typography, to its completeness, and it's just so cute. And, you know, yeah, I'm a serious special collections librarian who occasionally answers questions about my favorites with the word cute.
Don't we all?
From behind us, we hear, don't we all? Yeah.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite cute Shakespeare item? See, we're here today to stump the panel.
No.
Well, that's why there's two of us, because we bring these different perspectives to the live stream.
I have a favorite creepy Shakespeare item in the
Oh, creepy.
collection,
Creepy's good.
the little children's Shakespeare book that retells Shakespeare's plays, including the tragedies, featuring illustrations of little cherubic toddlers.
By Nesbit? E. Nesbit?
Yes, Nesbit. One of my students is working on, a few of my students now are working on this book. We read Hamlet this semester, and the version of Hamlet featuring little tiny cherubic children. Tiny Hamlet, tiny Ophelia. It's creepy, guys.
It's probably not something that when it was sold at the time, everyone immediately said creepy, but time has created a new perspective.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. E. Nesbit, the children's author, well known for her book, Five Children and It. I really love that book, and every time I say that, it just is met with silence. But to all of you Five Children and It fans out there, you might want to see her version of the children's Shakespeare with little cherub children acting out the works of Shakespeare. Again.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. Okay. Well, you know, every comedian out there, where they test a joke a couple of times, and if it's met with absolute silence, okay, I get it. No one else is interested in Five Children in It, but that's fine. That's fine. That's why we all like different things.
I do like the Lego Shakespeare, the brick Shakespeare. I think it's called the brick Shakespeare with Lego versions. That might be, it's kind of cute. I mean, Legos, although again, they don't spare the details, so.
Great. Do you want to look at a book, or do you want another question?
I'm gonna tweet out something just for a second, where it's almost 11, where we wanted to talk about a bit of Shakespeare in Iowa. As Colleen just mentioned, Foliomania is coming to Iowa City this fall. We're planning a whole variety of events concentrated around the time that the copy of the first folio is going to be here in September. And one of my goals is to show how Shakespeare has been studied in Iowa, not just at the University of Iowa, but in the state of Iowa. We have an English honors student named Christina Crowley, and I'm going to tweet out her honors thesis project, which is in the final stages of being completed, called Shakespeare in Iowa, focusing on the Shakespeare Club, the Women's Shakespeare Club of Marion, Iowa. And we have their notes and their scrapbooks from the early through the mid 20th century. It's really fascinating. You should go to that website immediately and take a look at the material that she's assembled there.
I have a scrapbook here today, but that one is undergoing conservation treatment for display in the fall.
This thing?
So, oh, thanks, John. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're gonna need those.
No, that's something else.
It is the box. Yep.
This?
Yeah.
So here we have, which one is this for?
I was handed it this morning.
Oh, okay.
So let's find out.
This is a scrapbook from a Shakespeare club.
Oh no, this is Shakespeare Club of Marion.
So this is the Shakespeare Club
it's
of
just
Marion.
there's like one super glorious one that is undergoing the
Nice
conservation.
picture of what
right
we
now.
call the birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon. And for all of you people in DC or fans of the Folger Shakespeare Library,
There you go.
the very first newspaper clipping here is about the opening of the Folger Shakespeare Library.
Yeah, let's see if we can get a shot of that. We're gonna bring the camera around and sorry, you're gonna have to take a break from our beautiful faces. We're gonna take a look at some historic material. Okay. And I will see what's going on out there.
Yeah. You can kind of see what's happening here. Get this. Hoover at Rights as Shakespeare Library is open. That would be President Hoover, who's from Iowa. The Herbert Hoover Museum is just about 10 minutes from Iowa City here. And so the local Shakespeare Club is celebrating the fact that a native Iowan is here at the opening of the Shakespeare Library. Here we have a picture of children in Stratford-upon-Avon celebrating the opening of the memorial to the playwright with a dance in the town's market square. Wow. Oh my goodness, this is fragile.
Here, I can help.
This
There
is, I've never seen this before.
Haha. It's always fun when we surprise you with things live. Yeah, we usually have pulled out the other one, and so this one hasn't gotten as much attention. It's really nice for everyone on the internet to get a chance to see it all at once as well.
So this is a clipping that the Marion Shakespeare Club threw a dinner party for Halloween. Fabulous Shakespeare stickers. Further news clippings. It looks like some of these are about members. Beloved Marion couple complete half-century of married life on Monday. Looks like pieces of the life of some of the members of the Shakespeare Club.
That comic is labeled 1932.
So it looks like gardening. Shakespeare Club gardening. Ooh.
Oh, well, Shakespeare Gardens. Shakespeare Club meeting on Thursday, April 4th, 1932.
It's annual guest night on Thursday. We have here decorations, not actual pressed flowers, but pressed tissue paper flowers in the book, with some stickers with quotations from Shakespeare's plays.
This one's from A Midsummer Night's Dream. I know a bank whereon the wild thyme blows, where ox lips and nodding violets grow. But
springtime themes. Here we have Hamlet. There's Rosemary. That's for remembrance. And here's Pansies. That's for thoughts. That's Ophelia's speech. Handing out flowers. Oh, this is awesome. It's the favorite pressed flower I've ever seen.
that's pretty high praise. So here's a page about the president of the Marion Federation of Women's Clubs. Marion, Iowa is located right next to Cedar Rapids, and Cedar Rapids is about a 25 minute drive from where we are here in Iowa City. So all of these cities are in eastern Iowa.
And there was a whole network of these Shakespeare clubs, not just in Iowa, although there were other ones in Iowa as well. If you go to Christina's website, she's got a nice bibliography of if you want to find more information about.
This is the opening of the Shakespeare Theater.
In Stratford-upon-Avon, right on the Avon. A baby, oh. Baby pictures?
That would be like a neck collar.
Yeah. Wow.
Such table manners.
And in the midst of all this, there's a clip for, this is from the middle of the Great Depression. Christina shows that they did respond to war efforts, to the Depression as well, during such times of national or international crisis. They, at some points, abandoned their Shakespeare meetings to do various kinds of charity work.
Food.
Our new president in the Shakespeare Garden.
Yeah, one of the opposite pages that we didn't get too close a look at was specifically about them planting petunias.
Credits. There was a constitution and a somewhat complicated set of rules that you can read about online for the club, and a picture of Falstaff.
An obituary for a club member on the opposing page who was a librarian and teacher.
And Christmas carols. And the menu for a dinner event. Roast chicken, cranberries, mashed potatoes, rolls, gravy, coffee. Does that say perfection salad?
Old English plum pudding.
Perfection salad. All right, I think that's as good a place as any to close this up.
We can definitely return to this, especially if this has inspired any questions from our viewing audience about our Marion Shakespeare clubs. But I also know that one of the things that we had scheduled for the 11 o'clock hour. Hi, we're back. Use the hashtag SHXLive to ask us questions live. But one of the things we had scheduled for our 11 o'clock hour was Heather Bain is joining us as a guest, and she was going to cut a quill for us and show us how to write some Shakespearean sonnets?
Yes.
Sonnets in calligraphy. So keep asking your questions, and you can go ahead and tell us on Twitter if you can only stick around for a few more minutes, and we'll make sure to get your questions in between while we're setting up for the quill cutting. But I think we're going to move on and look forward to this. It's pretty awesome.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to sit, Evan? Over here?
Maybe over there? Yeah,
Okay.
I think that'd be good. I'm going to put that back in the box. All right. Do we have any collection material on the table? Yeah, okay.
Yes, they should stay far away from my ink.
if people have specific sonnets they want me to write, I can do a request.
Oh, we're taking requests live for
Excellent.
calligraphy.
Heather, you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Heather Bain. I am a student here at the University of Iowa College of Library Science and also at the Center for the Book doing book studies. I'm focusing on historical book research, specifically bindings and calligraphy. So that's what I'm going to show you guys a little bit of today. I've brought some quills with me and I'll show you how to cut them using a penknife and then do a little bit of writing for you all. So this quill is one of the 5 primary feathers from the wing of a goose. Goose and swan feathers make the best quills. You need to take it from the primary of the wing so that it's strong enough. The feathers have this slight curve to them, so it fits into your hand. So if I was left-handed, I would want feathers from the other wing so that it would curve correctly, but I'm not, so. These quills have been hardened, in this case, just by sitting in my room for a year, but they are also cured by plunging them into hot sand, because when you immediately pluck a feather from a bird, it's kind of squidgy at the end, and so you want it to be hard so it feels kind of like a fingernail.
And so when you say hardened in your room, does that mean that it just like through time and aging?
Yes, time will cure, which is what we call the hardening process of the quills.
Time will cure
Quills.
quills. And
Also
other
all
wounds.
wounds apparently, but so this is my penknife. It's called, little knives are called penknives because you would use them to cut your quill pens. Etymology. So I'm gonna first get rid of some of these barbs, because when you see in historical movies and things, people with big floofy quills with all the feather parts still on, that's really ahistorical, because you don't want to write with these feathery bits poking into your hand constantly. So, and now there's a series of cuts that we're going to do to get the quill. This knife has a curved blade and has to be kept extremely sharp. So, okay, warning you guys, there's going to be flying quill bits. Colleen knows about this.
I'm moving back.
It's okay, Colleen.
I know, it's my second time. I should be able to deal with it. I'm not good with knives, but I appreciate people who are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I started by cutting, I don't know if you can see the details, but there's a scoop on that top part and then another scoop on the bottom. So this is just the very basic shaping of the quill. And now what I need to do is I'm going to actually get my skinnier knife, which is good for this part.
Oh, skinny knife incoming. So Heather and I cut quills once before when we were filming If Books Could Talk, one of the series on our YouTube channel, UI Spec Call on YouTube. You should subscribe. There are fantastic videos. But you will notice, if you look at episode 4 on If Books Could Talk, episode 5, that all of the footage of me cutting a quill did not make it into the video. And there's a very specific reason for that. I leave it to the professionals.
So what I just did was a little tiny twitch upwards with the knife, which makes the slit that will then make the point of the quill. So now that I have that slit, I can carve down either side of the quill to make the point and continue to flick bits of feather all over the place. It's a very important part of quill cutting. So if you have your feather cured properly, this process feels kind of like carving plexiglass. You'll sometimes get bad quills and then it's really weird and finicky, but.
And once a quill is finished and you start to use it, how much time or would you estimate, like how long can you use one before you need to carve one again?
Well, you can recut the tip, so you don't, every time your quill gets blunt, have to go through this entire process again. But you can't write very long before having to do a little bit of reshaping and recutting. So people who needed to write a lot very quickly would have a whole bunch of quills already cut, so they could just grab one and keep writing instead of needing to take the time to sharpen it.
Makes sense.
What I was doing there was just finishing off the tip because you need that to be very sharp so that it connects with the paper correctly. And I'm going to be making a pretty small quill here. I'm aiming for a little less than 0.5 millimeter because that will probably let me do a whole line of sonnet across on this paper that I have.
And how does that compare in width to the quill that you cut for If Books Could Talk, where we were trying to make such a tiny?
This is going to be about twice as wide as the one for If Books Could Talk. So, still pretty small, but not quite so minuscule. You'll actually be able to see the letters without like a magnifying glass.
Excellent. So for those of you just tuning in, we're answering your Shakespeare questions live using the hashtag ShakesLive. And Heather Bain from the Center for the Book has joined us and is cutting a quill to write a sonnet. If you would like to make a suggestion, as she has not yet put quill to paper, you can request a sonnet on our Twitter using the hashtag ShakesLive, which is now shaking. Right there. Oh, I'm going to get out of the way for the writing, though. For this, I think it might be good to take the camera around your shoulder. Do you think? If you could, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm just going to do,
we're going to get up
little practice marks first.
Great. Yeah, we're going to get up close so that you guys can see this. Let me check in on Twitter real quick and as you're practicing and see if we've gotten a request for a sonnet. Yep, we've had a request on Twitter for more close-ups. Oh, well, the quill cutting, well, we'll keep that in mind. We'll see how long Heather can stick around and if we get to get
Well, I'm going to need to do a little bit of finessing because this is being a little sputtery.
All right.
So
great.
What I'm going to do
as close as the web camera can tolerate.
Yeah. So first you can see if you can get that in. So here's the shape of the quill. This is the writing surface right there. So as you can see, it's quite small. I can compare it to a metal 0.5 millimeter pen nib. So as you can see, it's pretty similar, but it will write quite differently than that same metal nib. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there is that slit there at the top, which is really going to help with the writing. And so then I'm just going to do a little bit of finessing that, and then what I'm doing is just shaving off the very top layer of the quill here. And that'll make it a little bit more flexible because it was jumping around and spitting ink at me. And then I'll use the other side. Making sure that it's beveled.
I will just jump in and say that that in Richard III, there's a scene with a scrivener, and he says, this is the indictment of Lord Hastings. This is a very brief scene in the third act of the play. The scrivener who's written this comes out and kind of brags about his work. It's in a set hand, fairly engrossed. But he also says, 11 hours I've spent to write it over. So it takes a long time, I think, is what I'm trying to say here. Shakespeare realized that as well when he had when he caricatured an actual scrivener who would have been doing this for a living. It's a time-consuming process.
It is. So this ink that I'm using is modern walnut ink because the ink that they would have used at this time would be iron gall ink, which over time, if it's not made properly, turns acidic and eats away at the paper. We have some examples of that in the collections, and it's one of the sort of big ongoing conservation issues with historical documents. So
yeah, especially on paper.
Yes, it works much better on parchment because parchment is super tough. And there it's actually kind of good in some cases if it bites into it. Mm-hmm. Whereas paper just falls apart because it's weak.
Don't say that, so close to the paper.
I thought you were going to say so close to Tim Barrett.
Yeah, Tim Barrett is our scholar on campus who studies the history of paper, MacArthur Grant Award winner. So yes, we do have a beloved following on campus for the history of paper. Mm-hmm. But not you, great. I guess.
I'll tweet out his amazing website, Paper Through Time.
Oh yeah, great.
Here in Iowa.
No, paper's great. Parchment is just more fun, especially when you're writing, because if you mess up, you can just scrape it away and keep going. Whereas if you mess up writing on paper, you're more or less doomed.
Mm-hmm. And do you write on parchment often?
When I can. It's, you know, considerably more expensive than paper, but you can do some really interesting things with it, like do writing and then sand part of it away, either for artistic reasons or because you want to make a historical palimpsest looking thing.
Mm-hmm. And how does one acquire parchment?
There are only a few parchment sources. The Pergamena Tannery in New York is the major domestic supplier.
I saw them on Dirty Jobs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You too can see that if you want to know
Google
why parchment is so expensive, because nobody else wants to deal with
the
it.
internet. You can find it on the internet.
Mm-hmm. But the finished parchment is really beautiful. They make a variety of different animal types, and also they have dyed parchment, which is astonishingly beautiful. And it's all really great to work with. So
I also just want to point out that our librarian just said it's on the internet. Go take a look. I'm just saying.
The internet is an incredible information resource. And digitized copies of works are another copy that adds new functionality that is extremely useful. Mm-hmm. I mean, I live on the internet.
That's true.
They're both good.
I kid.
Together.
I joke because I love Colleen.
Materiality.
I love the internet. And books.
Mm-hmm. So, which sonnet should I write?
Yes, I did not yet see a suggestion, so this is your last chance, internet, if you want a sonnet written just for you. Basically, I have Twitter up right now, so that's your shot. If you want to request one on Twitter. We have a request on Twitter from Amber True, who has nominated Sonnet 105. That is Sonnet 105. Don't you know that off the top of your head, Heather?
Not that one. A few of them I actually do. But
I'll bring it up.
okay.
Adam, do you know Sonnet 105 off the top of your head?
No, I study books where things are written.
From there you go. First one that came up. Oh, here we go.
I will say that Sonnet 105 is really interesting in a variety of ways. I'm going to pull up the 1609 quarto version.
How's the sound going, y'all? What I'm worried about, Adam, is that since you aren't as close to the machine right now, I just want to be sure that we can all be heard.
Just poking at the camera with my quill.
That's how you know it's live. It's like we were right there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been shocked into silence. I've lost my searching device.
I will also say about this while Heather's writing, Sonnet 105 is really interesting because of the ways it varies from the 1609 quarto, and you can get a facsimile of that online either at the Folgers website or at the Internet Shakespeare editions. I'll tweet out the one I'm looking at right now. In modern editions, the repeated words fair, kind, and true, that exact phrase is repeated 3 times. Fair, kind, and true is all my argument. Fair, kind, and true, varying to other words. And then the closing couplet begins, fair, kind, and true, have often lived alone, which 3 till now never kept seat in one. A kind of clever final statement there, seeming to address the beloved here, that the person is fair, kind, and true in a way that no other person has been, but really it's talking about the sonnet itself, fair, kind, and true, the repeated phrase. In modern editions, that phrase is very often put in quotation marks, either the entire phrase or individual words, but that's not how it is in the 1609 quarto. And so you get a kind of greater variety of interpretation in the quarto than you might get in a modern edition.
Well, we can let Heather write for a few minutes, and we'll check back in with her. We did have some more questions. I don't have my iPad just now, but I wrote down the gist of one of the questions on Twitter from Mitch Thompson. I think it was Mitch Thompson 1 on Twitter. I can't quote the exact tweet, but he was wondering if. So he said that it's obvious that Shakespeare existed as a real person, and he wanted to know if he wrote all of the works attributed to him. This is the question we're taking
there.
Did he actually write all of the works attributed to him?
Well, I mentioned earlier, Titus Andronicus is a collaborative play. And there has been a lot of recent work done, most of it with computer analysis, to attempt to figure out exactly which lines in the plays are Shakespeare and exactly which lines may have been written by someone else. We seem to know that, for example, Thomas Middleton, a contemporary playwright, contributed to Macbeth, or perhaps revised Macbeth in the only text that we have. May also, if I might get this wrong, but contributed to another play as well. I'm teaching Pericles to my undergraduate class right now, and we do know that George Wilkins, who was a playwright and brothel owner, wrote a healthy chunk of that play. And there are many other instances of collaboration, both major and minor, because that's simply how the early modern theater worked. It was a fundamentally collaborative enterprise with actors. Shakespeare was in the privileged position to write for a particular acting company so he could exploit their strengths. And writers were extraordinarily collaborative as well. Also, plays themselves, we think of them as the plays that you see in a coherent single volume copy at the bookstore or a copy of the complete works. Plays themselves were these extraordinarily messy products. The early modern playbooks make it seem as if this is a coherent script, but in fact it includes many other pieces that have been patched together in all sorts of ways. Oh, sorry.
Your enthusiasm is
enthusiasm,
clear
yeah. So like songs, for example, or letters are other little textual bits that may or may not have actually been included in the play script. And if you want to learn more about that, just read anything written by Tiffany Stern.
As just one follow-up, I think, to complete that thought for Mitch. Are there any plays through time that were once attributed to Shakespeare that we now know, or were later not included? Has there been any of that type of history?
Yes. There were several playbooks attributed to Shakespeare that we don't think he actually wrote, and for one reason or another were attributed to him. 7 of those plays got printed in the 3rd edition of Shakespeare's folio, 1664. Plays never printed in folio before. Only one of those 7 plays, and that's Pericles, has made it into the canon. All of the other ones have been subsequently thrown out for various reasons. I will say that there was a good reason to do so, because all of those plays had been attributed to Shakespeare in print. And the early booksellers who started producing catalogs of all the plays that were ever yet printed and published, which they did starting in the 1650s and 1660s, based their analysis on actual printed artifacts. So it was in print, it had Shakespeare's name on it, it was a Shakespeare play. Only later, again in the 18th century, did those plays start to be separated out as the, what we now call the apocryphal texts. And if you want to know more about the Apocrypha, read Peter Kerwin's book. He's got a lot of excellent material on this, about the ways that those, quote, non-Shakespeare plays have been defined and shifted over time. So any given edition of the collected works of Shakespeare these days is likely to have a bunch of bits of other plays in it as well, or complete plays that he may have contributed to. So it's all messy, and there's no single solution for that.
So Mitch, I hope that answers your question. If you'd like to know more detail, just tweet again, and we're happy to follow up. The hashtag is SHX Live. Twitter is the fastest, was on the YouTube page for the live stream, and on our blog. I'll be checking in there shortly. And so, yeah, ask us a question, and we're answering your questions about Shakespeare Live. For those of you tuning in, we have English Department Shakespeare Professor Adam Hooks, Colleen Tyson from Special Collections. We've been joined by Heather Bain from the Center for the Book, who is cutting quills and writing sonnets. We're answering your questions live. We have some books from Special Collections on hand, and the fun continues until 1:30 p.m. So Central Time in the United States. And just keep asking us your questions, and we'll keep regaling you with tales of Shakespeare.
I have a book.
You have a book?
I have a book to show you. I think it's this book. I've never seen this book before, but I found it in the online catalog, and I thought it would be fun.
Ah, fun surprises live.
So this is a book from 1796. This is in the 1790s, the great William Henry Ireland forgery controversy. William Henry claimed to have found this vast trove of Shakespearean documents. In part, it appears to please his father, Samuel Ireland. He even wrote a couple of full-length Shakespearean plays that did not fare very well. So this was an enormous. If you're listening to this, you already know all about it, I'm sure. So I won't go into much detail.
Willie.
So this is a book, a tiny little pamphlet called "Familiar Verses from the Ghost of Willie Shakespeare to Sammy Ireland." And it is a very, very slim and fragile pamphlet, which may explain why most of this bound volume is blank pages.
Oh, well, that's tricky.
I want us to digitize this and digitize every last one of these blank pages. I'm sure the librarians will absolutely love it.
That would be a factual representation of the artifact that we have here.
Exactly. So I've never seen this before, but I'll quote a few lines from The Ghost of Shakespeare. Oh my goodness. So why call forth a ghost? Rather of critics summon up and host. They, luckless wights, luckless people, referring to the critics, I suppose, indict for daily bread, but you disturb the ashes of the dead. This is great. Peaceful I lay in Stratford's hallowed fane, and but for thee might yet enshrined remain. And then Shakespeare's ghost quotes part of his gravestone epitaph. Blessed were the man, I said, who spared the stones, but cursed be he who dared to move my bones. It's not a verbatim quotation. 'Tis true my bones lie unmolested there, yet still my spirit's dragged to open air. Rich in your prize of praise you take your fill, but specters yet may speak, and speak I will. Oh my goodness. This is great. I'm teaching a course this semester called Shakespeare's Bones, intended to capitalize on Shakespeare's death day, the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. And so we've been thinking a lot about materiality and mortality. This is why we read Hamlet. And
were you wooing to materiality or mortality?
Materiality.
All right, just checking.
I like mortality as well. So here, I actually started the semester with the gravestone epitaph, which warns people, curses people who will who would dare to disturb his bones. And so here, the ghost of Shakespeare is, how shall I put this, really upset about the forgeries that Samuel Ireland's son created. Let me get a few choice quotations here. All right, we've got, so Vortigern was the play that William Henry Ireland wrote and actually had it performed, but only once. There was a lot of laughter, I'll just say that. So Shakespeare is talking about all of these documents that they've claimed to find. Dramas in embryo leave their lurking holes, and little Vortigerns start forth in shoals. To work, ye lawyers, ransack all your deeds. The bait is swallowed and the public bleeds. Freely the cash comes down, lead boldly on. More papers found, in italics with an asterisk. A neighbor here hard by, an antiquarian of curious eye, deep skilled in pedigrees well known to fame. This keeps going. Calling forth the lawyers, I think what is intended that, like, look through all your deeds, you might find something by Shakespeare, but it's also interesting because the person who exposed the forgeries was Edmund Malone, who was trained as a lawyer, hence his focus on documentary evidence. In fact, he mentions Malone here. Next mount sublime upon the critic's throne, a trusty blade and true yclept Malone, truly named Malone. He mentions George Stevens as well. He complains about Vortigern once again. The ghost's opinion farther light to throw, for Shakespeare's sanction must have lasting weight, and fix forever thy depending fate. Give thee entire the antiquarian rule, or spurn me forth indignant from thy stool. Then know, my friend, to ease thy troubled mind, thy Willie's ghost to thee was always kind, and far from judging the old writings found, said to be mine, so long in darkness bound, I'll not pretend the mystic veil to draw, pronounce them forged, or pass them into law. And at the very end here, methinks I scent the morning air, abrupt we part, nor can I more declare. Low in the east, the glowing tints I see, Sammy, adieu, farewell, remember me. As if the invocation of Hamlet's ghost wasn't already obvious enough throughout most of this little poem here. Quoting the exact lines, the ghost in Hamlet speaks to Hamlet. Of course, whether that ghost is actually Hamlet is something that Hamlet spends a great amount of time trying to figure out. This is a fantastic little poem. A tiny little pamphlet written to capitalize on this contemporary controversy. Shakespeare's ghost was pretty common, I have to say. By the 1790s, there have been so many different Shakespeare's ghosts. It's not even funny. He first appeared on stage in the late 17th century as a way to kind of authorize adaptations of his plays.
If you want to take a quick look at the Twitter and see if there are more questions, because Heather needs the poem for writing, I'm going to grab another laptop.
Yeah.
I'll be right back, Internet, with more technology. Woo!
Apparently the internet loves Shakespeare's ghost.
Oh, well, much to say.
While Colleen is doing that, a question from the internet. What's materiality? Wow, I could actually spend the next couple of hours talking about that. Perhaps I won't. Mortality is pretty explanatory, self-explanatory, I think. When Shakespeare scholars talk about materiality, they're very often referencing material texts of one kind or another. The actual materials and the ways in which those materials fundamentally affect how we encounter not only the artifacts from the past, but the texts of those artifacts. This is what book history is all about. So I'll grab another quick example of this. Nope, that's the wrong book. Which book do I need here? This. Another little fake version of Shakespeare to keep the forgery train going. That was, yeah. My students always know that I say strange things in class. So here's a book, a bound volume. On the spine, it says Comedies. It's got an ex-library shelf mark on it. You could access the texts that are in this book. They're all in French. They're French plays. You could find these in other editions, but I want to show you this very carefully. I'm not sure. You get a good look at that? So this appears to have been a volume of separate publications that were subsequently bound together into this volume by the owner. There's a little manuscript table of contents here that tells you which 5 plays are in this volume, and they're numbered 196 through 200. So it's possible that this volume was in someone's private library, is what I would guess, and that this volume is one in a long series of other volumes bound together in the same way. So this is crucial evidence of how the book was actually used, how the book became a book in the first place, because these are just pamphlets, little individual plays that really only become a book when they're bound between the covers. The reason I wanted to pull this out, this is a relatively new acquisition in the past few years of the library. There's a little French play at the back, it's less than 30 pages long, called Shakespeare Amoureux, from 1820, at least according to the imprint here. This is the first play that features Shakespeare as a central character. Shakespeare's ghost, as I just said, appeared in many other plays and many other contexts, not even plays. But this is a French version, basically, of Shakespeare in Love from the 19th century. And so I encourage you to follow up on this. The other interesting thing, and this is going to be impossible to see, but the imprint on the title page is actually pasted down. It's covering up whatever the imprint was underneath. And I'm seeing this for the first time. So perhaps it was incorrect in some ways. Perhaps this was a paste down. In fact, this might be looks to me like a library copy, in the sense that they're pasting it over the imprint not for sale, but to demonstrate which library it's in. You can kind of even see the paste down here. So when I talk about materiality, that's what I'm talking about. Evidence of production, evidence of use. In this case, it's a play, but it's not a book. It's part of a book, but only because someone chose to bind it together at some point in their library. The other thing that I love about this, there are a couple of other evidence of ownership here. At some point, somewhere, you could check this book out. As it was in 1986. 1985 through 1986. It doesn't state exactly which library you could check it out from. Maybe this library? Possibly? At any rate, that's materiality for you. I hope I answered your question, Ginny Bell. Let's see.
So we did, now that I have more technology, hi, I'm back. For those of you just joining us, this is our Shakespeare's birthday week, death anniversary live stream, our 3rd annual with Adam Hooks, professor from the English department, and Colleen Tyson from Special Collections here at the University of Iowa. Our hashtag is SHXLive. Ask us any questions live. We're here till 1:30 p.m. Central Time in the United States. And we have another question.
Yes.
The question, which has come in on our blog, is, so today is the 400th anniversary of Cervantes' death. Can you talk about what is known or unknown about the play Cardenio? Did I say that anywhere near correctly?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'll take this one relatively briefly because it's a whole hornet's nest of things. There's been a lot written about that, about the play Cardenio recently. To sum up really briefly some of the main main pieces of evidence that we know, there is evidence that a play called Cardenio, which is based on an episode from Cervantes' Don Quixote, actually existed. It appears to have been a collaboration between Shakespeare and his successor as playwright for the Kingsmen, John Fletcher. They both wrote Two Noble Kinsmen together, published in the 17th century as by Shakespeare and Fletcher. The choice, so we think that this play existed. In the 18th century, the Shakespeare scholar Louis Theobald claimed to have found a manuscript of this play, or multiple manuscripts of this play, and he produced an adaptation of the play, which has found its way into the 3rd series of the Art in Shakespeare. So if you're interested in this, I would start there. It may or may not have been a forged play. We can't really state for certain. We do know that Theobald knew Shakespeare's language extraordinarily well. He also knew Fletcher's works extraordinarily well. And so he was perfectly positioned to either adapt or write from scratch a play that we think we know Shakespeare actually contributed to. The interesting part, to my mind, is not Shakespeare, it's actually the Fletcher part of this equation, because if Shakespeare and Fletcher ever collaborated on this, it was likely Fletcher's idea, because Fletcher was heavily influenced by Spanish literature. He adapted several plots for his plays from Spanish sources, including Cervantes. And so we should probably think more about this as a Fletcher play rather than a Shakespeare play, to be fair. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many further things that you could say, and scholars still debate about the interpretation of the evidence, about what actually constitutes evidence in this case. Adaptations continue to be produced. There are theatrical versions of Cardenio. At this point, there were multiple performances, multiple adaptations of the play that have been written by contemporary writers and, in some points, Shakespeare scholars. I won't mention by name, but there is a tendency for some Shakespeareans to not only become interested in Shakespeare's life near the end of their career, but seemingly appropriating Shakespeare, becoming a version of Shakespeare themselves. And so writing your own version of a lost Shakespeare play is one way to do that. The other thing I'll mention for this is the book from just a few years ago, Arthur Phillips's The Tragedy of Arthur, which is one of my favorite commentaries on kind of Shakespeare biography and Shakespearean textuality. It is purports to be an introduction to a scholarly edition of a lost Shakespeare play called The Tragedy of Arthur. It's actually a novel that takes the form of a fictionalized
Oh,
memoir.
goodness. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
found the YouTube page. Excellent.
And so I would look that up. I really enjoy that book, and so I think it has a lot of it's a great commentary on the idea of finding a lost Shakespeare play.
Well, this is where we take a brief station break and remind you of the hashtag SHXLive. Tweet us your questions. We're answering them live. Also, you know, we in Special Collections, we've been working for several years now to bring you lots of different video content on our YouTube channel. And so if you are tuned in and you like this content, help us out a lot if you go and click that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, which is UISpecColl, UISPECCOLL, or University of Iowa Special Collections on YouTube. And click subscribe, and that tells us you want to see more video.
We have one question. You're talking about Shakespeare's death, about a much more recent death. Hi, Megan. It's nice to see you.
I'm so glad that we're getting to this question.
Yeah. Would Shakespeare have a favorite Prince song? I think so. I think Shakespeare would be a huge Prince fan. I'm gonna take the easy way out on this one, Megan, and say that he'd be a big fan of Purple Rain, because When Doves Cry was featured in one of the great Shakespeare film adaptations, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. And so I think that he would appreciate the fact that two great artists come together in that particular way. But I'm sure they're having a great conversation about exactly this question in the place in the beyond where great entertainers go when they have left the earth.
Do we want to check in on the sonnet? Heather, how are you feeling? Do you want another?
I have 2 lines left.
Oh,
So
2 lines left. So we're going to hold off
a little bit longer and
on
then
the
I can do
check-in.
the whole thing.
I'm going to stop bumping the table. And very soon, we will check in on the sonnet.
The other way to answer that, I mean, Shakespeare was a member of the King's Men, and so there were princes, and I think that he would probably have been a fan of Prince Henry rather than Prince Charles. Not the current Prince Charles, sorry, the one who got England stuck in the Civil War.
All right, so we have had a few questions on our feed on the live stream,
Yes.
so I want to get to some of those now. So one of the questions that we've had come in from Will Brown, I believe is for you, Adam.
Okay.
If you could wave a magic wand and retrieve a copy of one lost play, and I'm going to let this be in history. You should think of this broadly. But if you want to retrieve a copy of a lost play, but you can only choose one. Oh, the question specifically asks History of Cardenio or Love's Labour's Won, but I'll let you take that question wherever you want.
Love's Labour's Won, definitely. That's the one I would want. If you don't know what Love's Labour's Won is, it's mentioned in 1598 by this man about town in London, Francis Mears, who provides a kind of contemporary account of the literary landscape in London. And he mentions several Shakespeare plays, including Love's Labour's Lost and Love's Labour's Won. We thought that maybe that could have been a mistake, or it could have been an alternate name for a different play at the time. But then in the 20th century at the University of Illinois, my undergraduate alma mater, current home of the T.W. Baldwin collection, one of the great collections of early modern books in the world. T.W. Baldwin taught at Illinois and found in a book used as binder's waste, so stuck in the book, a bookseller's list from the 17th century. And guess what play is listed there? Love's Labour's Won, which might indicate that it was actually a printed artifact. It was a Shakespeare play that for one reason or another disappeared. And so I would certainly want to find that one. The other part of the question, you know, is there a lost play that we want to find? I mean, that's always the quote Hamlet, the pre-Shakespearean version of the Hamlet play, which we know was in part influenced by a pre-existing Hamlet play that was not written by Shakespeare. That's a long and complicated story, but it would, I mean, that would be nice. But as always, if we find new evidence of Shakespeare, it usually just complicates the questions that we ask. It asks totally different questions and throws everything off. So, so that's my answer for that.
Right now, I'd like to pause and give a shout out to Rachel Dankert, who says this is her 3rd year running and tuning into the Shakespeare live stream. So thanks for sticking with us for all 3 years. And we look forward to you tuning back in next year too.
Rachel also says that she saw a production of The Tragedy of Arthur in New York, and it was amazing. So a fake, lost, novelized Shakespeare play gets an actual performance. I think that's a nice end to the chain there.
I actually think that's a good segue into some of the questions that we had on the feed. Because we had a question, how are pamphlets different from fanzines? Are they essentially the same, or is the pamphlet different? Following up, do you think these pamphlets, assuming it's the one that we were showing before,
Yeah.
would pamphlets be like the fanzines of their time?
Oh my, so much to think about there. I'll say a couple of different things about that, and I still have this book sitting next to us, so I'll take that. So when book historians and Shakespeare scholars talk about pamphlets, they talk about something this skinny. In fact, often much skinnier than this. So this is just a few pages that have been bound into a much larger volume, because it's a waste of time and effort and money to bind an individual pamphlet like this. And so quartos, which the format that plays were published in, individually, collectors would not bind a single playbook together. So you can often see this, and if you go look at any Shakespeare quarto on the Folgers website, very likely you'll see a kind of 19th century gold-tooled Morocco, and it's going to be like tiny little skinny pamphlet because someone has ripped it out of a volume that contained a bunch of other plays, and they want to treat the Shakespeare special. In the 17th century, people would gather up playbooks and have several of them bound together. This happened for sermons as well. Sermons and plays are very similar printed artifacts, or any other text as well. We have several examples in special collections of books that have been bound together into a single volume, which means that in some sense they're not really a book until you bind it together. As for the fanzine part of it, I mean, I do think this 19th century French play about Shakespeare is in a sense a kind of fan fiction, one might say.
That was the follow-up question. So was this a Shakespeare fanfic fanzine in a sense then? And if not, why?
It might be, although you have to, this perhaps, possibly, you can, if you stretch the meaning of the term fan fiction, you might come up with something like this. The adaptations of Shakespeare plays are certainly not fan fiction in the same sense, but fictionalizing an episode from Shakespeare's life in which he participated could certainly fit the bill there. The fanzine part is slightly different because a fanzine is a description of a material artifact itself, and the content there can vary in lots of different ways, and there are particular guidelines for the genre of a fanzine. So in that sense, not necessarily. A pamphlet was just what we call a very short printed artifact.
And I think one of the key differences, one of the things that emerged with fanzines is the fact that you had so many technologies suddenly available where an individual could print something for the first time. Mimeograph, hectograph, you know, as those technologies emerged, you didn't have to go to a printer. You know, and so there's probably a way to make a correlation if a printer himself was putting something out. But to me, that's one of the closest correlations, is the ability for a person to really harness a technology and not to have anyone in between. And really broadly to be able to take advantage of those technologies. To me, that's something that's really emerged in the 20th century that's hard to find an equivalent earlier. Though I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're live and brainstorming on the spot.
I mean, manuscript circulation would be possibly the analog for a text that's circulated and self-produced and circulated. And again, it's not, maybe fanzine is probably not the right word, but we know, for example, Sir Edward Dering, the first recorded purchaser of the first folio, and he bought 2 copies, also produced a manuscript adaptation of the Henry IV plays that exists in manuscript, possibly for a kind of a performance, a family performance at home, something along those lines. And so I'm also thinking like manuscripts, like letters, in Shakespeare's time were folded up to about, you know, about the size of what some of the fanzines that are produced here on campus, about that kind of format.
Sure.
So
yeah, then I guess it's just a difference of scale. Because one of the things that you do get with a mimeograph or hectograph, or even going into Xerox and copier technology, is that it's not mass produced, but you can make multiple copies in a way that's far easier than a manuscript copy by hand. And so there is an in-between scale, I think, that makes the unique ability to communicate with a community of a size, of a larger size, than can circulate. Though certainly people read letters out loud, you know, so the one copy could reach a community in a different way than a fanzine handed off person to person. But yeah, I think some of those differences of scale to me are something that I think about if I was trying to make an equivalent in a different time period of one technology to another.
yeah. Speaking of writing things by hand,
Writing things by hand.
do we want to
the
see
perfect
our Sonnet
segue.
105?
So we've been hearing that the quality is decent for being able to see this, but do let us know. And we'll tweet out a higher quality photo. I think I'll have to do that with the iPad. We've already had a request for a second, so you'll have to decide, Heather, how your hand's doing and how long you want to hang out.
My hand's fine, and I've got another piece of paper ruled already. So.
Oh, she came prepared. I believe that 73 was requested next, and I will be able to bring that up.
Okay.
And for now, I'm going to sneak behind you and tweet a photo if my technology cooperates with me.
Yeah, so the hand that I used for this is a modern interpretation of Gothic cursive. So it's nice for things like this because it's a comparatively fast hand.
I had to take it sideways, so I'm just going to see if I can do a flip real quick, and then we'll get this up. Woo! Which sonnet was that?
105?
105. Hand calligraphed by Heather Bain.
I will say that we have a request for Heather to do Sonnet 73, and I have a quick question. Are we talking the 1609 version of Sonnet 73 or the version included in the 1640 poems published by John Benson, crammed together with Sonnet 77 and called Sunset.
So, Megan.
Let us know, Megan.
Megan, please specify, and then we'll get that out to you. Do you know Megan?
I know Megan.
Oh, okay. That seemed like a very, very, very specific question for our internet viewers, but excellent.
Yes. So the thing for people not named Megan watching, the 1609 quarto of Shakespeare's sonnets was never reprinted. The version of the poems there weren't reprinted until the 18th century. But in 1640, a man named John Benson, who also published some of the works of Ben Jonson. So John Benson's Ben Jonson, I've always loved that. He published a book of called Shakespeare's Poems, or poems by William Shakespeare. And what he did with the sonnets was not to reprint the 1609 version, but he would take sonnets and combine them together, sometimes 2 or 3 sonnets together, and give them a name. And so sonnet, we just did sonnet 105, would have been in a poem called Constant Affection, that includes sonnet 104, 105, and 106. And so you can see that Benson has gotten a bad reputation for, playing around with Shakespeare's sonnets, but he was actually a very astute reader of the sonnets in ways that we're still thinking about.
Oh, just one more internet comment to our person who asked a question about fan fiction.
Yep.
It's for you. Thanks. You missed it. It's fine.
Oh.
We did not yet get an answer about the sonnet. So we've got Heather on hold for just a moment while we hear from Megan about which version of Sonnet 73 she would like to hear.
Or you could adapt Sonnet 73 in your own version. This is what happened in the 17th century. There are several, not a lot, but several manuscript copies of Shakespeare's sonnets. The most popular seems to have been what we call Sonnet number 2. And some of those have some significant variations. It's often thought that they may represent earlier versions of some of the sonnets, because we know that Shakespeare was circulating them in manuscript in the 1590s, so at least a decade before they were printed. Or it could simply be that people found a version of the sonnet and altered it as they copied it into their own manuscript, which is how these kinds of things worked. They weren't as concerned with specific forms of textual fidelity. Okay, you're gonna need to do the 1640 poems.
Okay, we got an answer.
I will pull up a version of it online.
Okay. And I am just rotating the photo. That's right, internet. You get to watch all the behind the scenes fun as I rotate the photo and make it fit in the box. Technology. Yes. Rotation. We are a go. All right, I'm going to tweet out that Heather's calligraphy in the correct orientation. You'll get to take a close-up look. I was hearing that the quality on the video was, I heard from one good and I heard from one a little pixelated, so just keep us updated on how it's looking. If there's anything else you want to see close-ups of so far, if you want to tweet a question at us, use the hashtag SHXLive. Or type into our live stream feed on our YouTube page, UISPECCOLL, UISPECCOLL is our YouTube. Please subscribe. Lots of great video there. Yeah, we've got that feed up now too. Oh, yep, there. I see where Megan replied. And I'm just about to tweet out the corrected photo of the calligraphy.
If you'd like to read the poem Sunset from John Benson's 1640 poems, I'm tweeting a link out to it right now. This is from the University of Pennsylvania's online Horace Howard Furness Shakespeare collection.
Heather, how long have you been studying calligraphy?
I took my first class when I started here at the Center for the Book. So that was almost 3 years ago now.
3 years.
Yeah.
So one, you're exceptionally talented, and two, that seems like incredible progress for 3 years. That gives all of us hope that if we just get off the internet and try something, we too could be producing beautiful work of some kind in 3 years' time.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. So that's it, folks. Your antidote to internet addiction.
Calligraphy addiction.
Today's advice from the Shakespeare live stream: if you find yourself addicted to the internet, which I realize you're watching 3 hours on the internet right now, but take up calligraphy. It's a good antidote. And tweet us questions. All right, I am just waiting for this image to tweet, and then I can pull up. Are you pulling up the text that she needs?
Yeah, but my internet's not working.
Darn internet.
I know. Actually,
I could just talk about a book while you're doing that.
that seems like a great idea. More books,
The internet is great, but
but sometimes
books don't need Wi-Fi. I'm going to talk about this little one first. One of my favorite little things. One of my favorite things, and I mentioned this earlier, are booksellers' catalogs, especially those catalogs in the 17th century, which cataloged all the printed plays. We don't have a 17th century version of that. Although if our acquisitions librarian is listening, if you ever get a chance to buy anything by Francis Kirkman, I'm just saying.
we'll let Margaret know.
I would love that. I study those, I've written about those booksellers' catalogs in the 17th century, but they continued into the 18th century. And we happen to have a copy from 1732, a true and exact catalogs of all the plays and other dramatic pieces. Tiny little slim thing. So again, this is bound together. This is bound in a library binding now, but this is the kind of thing that could have been sold on its own, or it could have been bound with other books sold by the same bookseller. And this goes in alphabetical order by the name of the play, not the name of the author. And the interesting bit about this, and you're not going to be able to see it, but it explains how to use this play, or how to use this book. There's the first page. You can see a little bit of the alphabetical listing there.
Do you want them to get a little closer? We can make that happen.
I'm just going to read this out.
Okay.
So it's alphabetized by the name of the play, but there are also other marks. A C marking a comedy, a T for tragedy, obviously, TC for tragicomedy, F for farce, and O for opera. Those are not the same generic distinctions that were used 50 years earlier in the 17th century. So it tells you a lot about how the contemporary theatrical landscape defined genres. There's also the mark of punctuation, the asterisk. Those plays that have this mark are acting plays. Acting plays presumably stands for a practice that actually did start in the 17th century as well, but it is common in the 18th century, of printing a play as it was acted. so in the 17th century, the 1676 edition of Hamlet marked the lines that had been left out in the recent stage production. And so these are plays as they were acted, presumably. Acted or adapted, so the script that was performed rather than the play that Shakespeare wrote. And so this is just a lovely, and it's excellent that there are no mentions of authors anywhere. Romeo and Juliet, T, with an asterisk. And if our internet was working, I'd look up exactly which edition that was alluding to. And then the final leaf here, excellent. An advertisement for the English theater in 3 parts, being the select plays of the most celebrated authors. Part 1 in 8 volumes, Part 2 in 6 volumes, Part 3 in 6 volumes as well. And it gives you the bookseller's name, which is also the bookseller's name who printed and published this little pamphlet catalog. So not only do you get to see all the plays in print, presumably which he's offering to sell, at least some of them, but you can collect multi-volume editions of plays. Also not necessarily organized by author as well, so simply plays because they're plays. Yet another example of a comment that I like to make, which is that plays did not become literature when they were printed. They simply became plays, because that's what they called them in print. This is really something I didn't know we had in the collection until recently, but really a little treasure. This is Gerard Langbane's An Account of the English Dramatic Poets, published in 1691. I'm not going to hold this up because this is in a pretty fragile binding.
We can come around. Is there something close up that you want to see?
Yeah.
All right.
Come on over.
Thanks. And then I've got this up, but when we're finished with that, I'll need some of your guidance to figure out which version of Sonnet 73. But you can
There we go.
take a look at that.
So I'll confess that I've written about this before, and so what you're going to get is my take on this. Langbane, to a certain degree, continued the practice of publishing these dramatic catalogs of all the plays. And as I've argued that, in fact, the earliest biographies of Shakespeare predated Nicholas Rowe in 1709, which is where we started at 10:30 a couple of hours ago. So here you have an early account of William Shakespeare, based, for the most part, of a list of things that he has written. So in fact, the life of Shakespeare is determined by the publication of plays, the collection of those plays in print, and their listing and description here. As you see, he's writ about 46 plays, all which, except 3, are bound in 1 volume in folio, printed in London 1685. So that would be the 4th folio. 43 plays, because this includes the 7 plays added in 1664. So those apocryphal plays that we talked about before. And there's one here. So Thomas Lord Cromwell, that was an early play quarto that was attributed to Shakespeare and got incorporated in. I want to get to the end of this list. So he says, besides these plays, I know Mr. Kirkman, that's Francis Kirkman, my favorite 17th century bookseller, ascribes another pastoral to him, The Arraignment of Paris, but having never seen it, I dare not determine whether it belongs to him or no. So he had never seen a copy of The Arraignment of Paris, a play, off the top of my head, I think was published in the 1580s and now ascribed to George Peele. He had indeed, in his catalog of plays, Kirkman's catalog of plays, attributed The Arraignment of Paris to Shakespeare. It has no attribution on its title page. He did so, and I would have to go back and double check, but he did so in part because of a mistake in rearranging his catalog. And so it appears directly below As You Like It and All's Well That Ends Well in order. And so it seems to have been a slip that Shakespeare's name just got entered on the next line when it shouldn't have been.
I want to check in quickly with Heather because we had some questions for her, and I want to make sure she has the right sonic
Go for it.
so she can get started.
Okay.
Does that look all right? That's just the first one that came up.
Hold on, I think that my internet might actually be working now, so let me see if I can.
Just took a little blip. Well, you let us know and we'll get started. And then Heather, we actually had 2 questions for you.
Okay.
What texts are you using as exemplars for your interpretation of Secretary?
So this is actually a version of Gothic cursive that was developed by Cheryl Jacobson, the calligraphy professor here at the Center for the Book. She wanted an attractive, quickly written hand that she could use for notes, essentially, and has also used for larger textual things. So while it was based on exemplars of Gothic cursive from the 14th and 15th century, it has been considerably modernized and streamlined.
Great. The other question for you is, do you have an Instagram where you post your work?
I have one. It's been kind of defunct for a few months because I broke my ankle back in January and have not been doing many things. But you can find me on Instagram at the Blue Bantam, one word.
The Blue Bantam. All right. So follow Heather on Instagram at the Blue Bantam if you would like to see more examples of her work. Oh, I just had the poem, and I will bring it up again. Tiny. Click image to get the details, and then we can get you working.
Mm-hmm. And we decided that that was an acceptable version.
Yes.
Okay.
We have identified the acceptable version. It's just rather small. Do you think
you can blow it out though?
Well, that's what I was trying to do, and that's what wasn't working.
I had a quick question, a quick follow-up question to the little catalog here with the actors' versions, the acting versions of plays, along the lines of, let's see, do we know if any actor improvisation made it into the printed versions, which is an excellent question. The short answer is yes. There's a much longer answer for that, however. Actors were very often blamed in the 18th century for the bits of Shakespeare that editors didn't like. Like Alexander Pope would kind of demote passages he didn't like to the bottom of the page. And even editors in the 20th century have done something along those lines. But actors' improvisations did make it into Shakespeare's text, and I'm going to read you my favorite example of this. This is from the first quarto of Hamlet, 1603, which I just taught alongside the Q2 version of Hamlet to my class this semester. The Q1 version, the first quarto, the first edition printed, seems to have been a text that has some relation to performance or adaptation. It's half as long. There are some extraordinarily significant differences between the Hamlet version that we're more familiar with. So in Q1, when Hamlet gives advice to the players, he famously comes off as a theater snob in the play, and he wants to make sure that the players have only said what's been set down for them, what's in the script. And remember, this is the play that Hamlet is kind of inserting something into, kind of half directing in a certain way to try to catch the conscience of the king. So here he says, he's mocking people who come to the playhouse with their notebook in order to write down lines from the plays. And he mocks these people because they're only copying down the jokes, or what he calls the jests. So they're commonplacing from plays. They're taking a technique that's meant for scholarly use, collecting authoritative examples from the classics to make an argument, and they're doing exactly what they're not supposed to do. They're writing down the most unauthoritative, ephemeral lines possible. That's the jokes from the actors on stage. And we know that the clown in Shakespeare's company in the 1590s, Will Kemp, was known for his athletic acting style, his dancing, his improvisations. The clowns in Shakespeare's company often were famous for this. This is what they're there for. They very often are playing a version of themselves in the play, whatever character they're actually given. So in one of the early texts of Romeo and Juliet, he's playing the role of one of the servants, and instead of having the name, I'm forgetting this, it's supposed to be Peter or something along those lines, and instead of saying, enter character name, enter Peter, it just says enter Will Kemp, and he proceeds to do the things that Will Kemp would do. Anyway, Hamlet here in Q1 tells us some of the jests that were popular, presumably popular at the time. So these are all punchlines to jokes that we don't have anymore, like, "Cannot you stay till I eat my porridge?" Yeah. Let's see. "My coat wants a cullisin," and "your beer is sour." So these are either jokes that everyone in the theater would know that were popular from plays.
More cowbell.
Exactly. Or they're the kinds of jokes that would have been common. So yeah, this is a self-reflexive moment where Hamlet is talking about the fact that actors improvise, and he's kind of mocking that practice at the same time.
I do have another question.
Yes.
So this one came to us from Ginny Bell on Twitter. Just wondering if we wanted to talk about what is materiality.
Oh, we did that one when you were gone.
Sorry, Internet. I missed that one.
Yeah,
Well,
you'll
great.
never know what materiality is now.
It's a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's-
Do we know?
It's
okay,
not
we missed that one.
immateriality unless it really is.
That's what I get for stepping away.
Yeah.
I missed all the fun. Okay. Well, that's good. At least we got answers to all of those. I had been going backwards to making sure that we just hadn't missed any questions along the way. And so the internet did not miss that question, but I did by stepping out to get a laptop.
You were here for the funny jokes, though, so that's something.
Just keep your questions coming. This is a good time to pause for our station break. This is our third annual Shakespeare live stream, and thank you for all of you who have tuned in years past and have been sticking with us for 2 hours already today. We're going into the last hour of our broadcast, and we have an additional guest here for the last half an hour, so keep listening, keep tuning in. We have been joined today by Heather Bain, who is gloriously calligraphing sonnets here while Adam and I jiggle the table so as to annoy her in her efforts. This is our hashtag for today, SHX Live, answering all of your questions about Shakespeare and Shakespeare-related things and librarianship and rare books and the history of actors, inserted lines, and anything that you have questions about. Get us on Twitter. We're also checking the feed on our YouTube live stream feed. If you put it somewhere else, I've also been checking Facebook and our blog, but it's, especially with going into the last hour with things to still fit in, I might not be checking all of those feeds anymore. So if you want to get your question answered, Twitter or the live stream feed are the best for the last hour.
Yeah. So I want to show this little book, which is not from Special Collections, which is something that I got off the shelf, or at the very least in the library storage. Some of the things we're going to be talking about in the last hour are ways that we've remembered Shakespeare on centennials. 2016, the 400th anniversary of his death, the first folio. I'll say a little bit more about that in a bit. The kind of commemorative volume that re-embodies or resurrects Shakespeare's corpus after his death. I wanted to find something in our collection from the last centennial, 1916, and of course that year is complicated for a variety of reasons because of World War I or the Great War. What I have from our collection, though, is altogether more light-hearted. This is a tiny, fragile little pamphlet in so very many ways. This is called King Shakespeare. It is a little play or a little masque. It's called A Masque of Praise, created by the Drama League of Boston for the Shakespeare Tercentenary. And it's meant to be distributed to schools so that students can perform this little masque or this little play themselves in order to commemorate the Shakespeare centennial. What it consists of, and I'm not going to be able to show you this because it's far too fragile. King Shakespeare includes the allegorical figures of Father Time and comedy and tragedy, as well as, excellent, we're going to
get you a close-up of this.
The characters represented, Father Time, who passes across the stage, indicating the passing of time. The characters are all famous people who have commemorated Shakespeare. So John Hemming and Henry Condell, the compilers of the first folio, Ben Jonson, who we've heard about before, William Bass and John Milton, all three of those wrote commemorative poems about Shakespeare. David Garrick, the most famous Shakespearean actor of the 18th century, and then 19th century critics, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thomas Carlyle. And most of the play is the series of figures coming out on stage and delivering versions of their poems or their prose in praise of Shakespeare. So Hemming comes out and then Condell comes out and they recite passages from the preliminaries of the first folio. Jonson reads from his poem about Shakespeare. Milton as well reads his poem about Shakespeare. And then we have some lengthier conversations here between Emerson and Carlyle talking about Shakespeare. And at the end, this very nice suggestions for costuming. Here's how you can put your costumes on or design your costumes. I love that Milton has a Puritan costume, suit, cloak, shoes, stockings, and hat, all of black. White collar and cuffs, long hair falling down over his ears, imitating some of the portraits of the authors. The other thing I wanted to point out, so this is a book from 1916 that you can check out. I'm the first person who has ever checked this book out of the library. You can see this old insert here. If I don't bring it back before June 6th of 2016, I might get a fine of 3 cents. I'm assuming that that's gone up. But it's also got the original actual library card. King Shakespeare, alas.
And our favorite stamp, always used in the early 20th century, do not take from the library.
No one in Iowa has ever performed King Shakespeare, it seems. At least not in Iowa City.
Alas.
Just checking in on the hashtag.
I will also state that this, the imprint here says compliments of Gin and Company publishers. So they would send this out for free to schools, but then there are, uncoincidentally, lists in the back of other Shakespeare books, and even a form in which you can write to Gin and Company to inquire about purchasing some of these books that they have also published. So it's doing double duty. School kids performances, but also a publishing venture as well. Isn't that always how it goes?
So I'm going to hit you with one more question.
Yes.
If you think it's a good time.
Yes.
What I was doing previously was going back through the feeds and making sure we didn't miss any, because though I had missed one, we did miss one. We missed one from the feed on our YouTube channel from right back at the beginning. So Christopher Taylor has asked, setting aside the big ones like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, the Scottish play, what second tier plays do you find most interesting, either critically or artifactually?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I have no problem just saying Macbeth, because to heck with that curse thing.
So we're not in the theater.
Yes, exactly. We're in the library. That's what the play is called. It's interesting. So the plays listed, Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, were from the moments of their first composition and performance always some of the most popular Shakespeare plays. If we're going by early printed versions, they would have come in like 4th and 5th behind 3 of the history plays, Richard III, Henry IV, and Richard II, which are all wonderful plays as well. He also mentions Macbeth, which is only included in the first folio, but forms what we think of, or what has been labeled, the big 4 tragedies. So Hamlet and Macbeth and Othello and King Lear. Those are all developments within both bookselling and Shakespeare criticism and Shakespeare editing in subsequent centuries. And so in a sense, we think of the Shakespeare canon in a very different way. There's no reason, I mean, there are specific reasons that those 4 became much more popular, much more well-known. Hamlet is commonly taught in high schools. Romeo and Juliet's taught in high schools. Othello is sometimes. I teach Othello and Macbeth all the time myself. But we only think of those as the first tier tragedies or plays, as the questioner said, because they've been labeled as such over time. I've already mentioned one of the plays that I really enjoy in a lot of different ways, and that's Pericles, which after the 5 plays I just mentioned, Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, Pericles was right there with Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet as a popular play in its time. It was popular on stage. It was very popular in print. In fact, the co-author of the play, George Wilkins, produced a prose version of Pericles, so that, again, you see this play having a life in multiple media at the same time. It's also the only play of Shakespeare's that only exists in what used to be called a bad text. So Q1 of Hamlet used to be a bad quarto. Q1 of Romeo and Juliet used to be a bad quarto. We now value those in many different ways. Pericles as a text is kind of a mess in a lot of different ways. And so because of all these reasons, it's marginally in the canon, it's got a difficult text, it's often overlooked. I'm teaching it right now in my undergraduate Shakespeare class in the Arden 3 edition, edited by Suzanne Gossett. And I have to say that if we want to go all high fidelity on this, I mean, Shakespeareans have their top 5 or top 10 best Shakespeare editions, critical editions of Shakespeare, and Suzanne Gossett's Pericles would definitely be on my top 5 list, top 10 list. Really does an excellent job attending to the various facets of the play. It's also interesting because in performance, it's a very kind of performative play. There's a lot of spectacle happening. So there's a lot of opportunities to like go all out in performance. And because it's a marginally Shakespearean play, often theater companies just go for broke. They'll do crazy things with Pericles. That's interesting in and of itself. Also, editors have taken a lot of liberties with Pericles because they think that they need to fix the text. Suzanne Gossett doesn't necessarily want to fix the text. She wants to take it seriously and only alter things when there's a very good reason to do so. My favorite example of this is the Oxford edition of Shakespeare back in the 1980s that inserted a new scene into Pericles based on a passage in the prose version. So inserting a brief scene of music and a song, because there is some indication in the play, there's a mention of music being played. Although one might say that mentioning that it was played means that you don't actually have to play it on stage, but you wouldn't rewrite or just write from scratch a new scene in Hamlet, but oh, you can for Pericles. So Pericles deserves a lot more attention.
You want to tackle that one?
Yes.
All right, let me read out this question, also from Ginny Bell on Twitter, and on the other side of the room. Hi. Thanks for your great questions. What would you think of a Hamilton-style musical about Shakespeare? And what episodes from Shakespeare's life would be best suited for rap?
I have lots of things to say about this.
Yes.
First of all, one of the things that's happening in the fall semester on campus here at Iowa is that a group called the Q Brothers from Chicago is going to be in residence for a few weeks, and they're going to create a hip-hop version of Julius Caesar, which is awesome.
Right?
Julius Caesar, a play often taught in high schools because there's no sex, although it does. Although it does teach you how to overthrow the government.
Yes.
Yeah, assassination is fine, sex is not. They're also well known for having performed a hip-hop version of Othello, one that's far more sophisticated than the old reduced Shakespeare company rap about Othello, which always made me kind of cringe from the first moment that I heard it. And so that would be, a hip-hop version of Shakespeare's life would be great. I have a feeling, though, that most of Shakespeare's life wasn't terribly suited to musical theater. I mean, if you want to, well, I'll retract that statement immediately, because Hamilton is about the Secretary of the Treasury, and Shakespeare spent a lot of his life acquiring land and lending money and calling in his debts. He was very concerned about money, so that actually might be the best. Those always inspire some of the best stories surrounding Shakespeare and his legend. The other thing I will say, if you're looking for hip hop and Shakespeare, and if you can't find the Q Brothers version of Othello online, I know that you can find the Key and Peele sketch about Othello online very easily, and I definitely recommend that. I finally had a Shakespeare class last semester that I felt was so locked in, such smart kids and such great readers, that I was able to show it to them in class, which is not something that, well, I have tenure now too, so I can do that whenever I want, I suppose. But it's a very complicated cultural text in a lot of different ways. So that's what I would say.
All right. Well, we are continuing on with our live stream here with Professor Adam Hooks from the University of Iowa English Department, Colleen Tyson from Special Collections. Tweet us your questions. We're answering them live. We have books, we have guests, and we have just 45 minutes left in today's live stream, in this year's live stream. This is your chance. Internet, friends, Romans, countrymen, tweet us your questions.
I'm going to talk about another anniversary here just really quickly.
It's 3 hours. If we're in the last hour, that's where we are now.
Okay, so this is something else I checked out of the library, and it has been checked out before, but not since the 20th of June, 1984. As part of our journal collection, we have what appears to be pretty much the full run of the Shakespeare Yarbook, which began as the journal of the Deutschen Shakespeare Gesellschaft. And if you know German, sorry, I just mispronounced that, I'm sure. The reason I wanted to bring this out is that there was a huge tercentenary celebration of Shakespeare's birth in 1864 in Germany. And this journal was began based on that celebration. They created a German Shakespeare Association and created their own journal. And so here we have the very first edition of the Shakespeare Yarbook from 1865. Most of it is in German, but they still quote Shakespeare in English. Over the years, there have been many English language contributions to this journal as well, and it's still active. The other thing I wanted to show alongside this is that Shakespeare scholarship owes a great deal to German scholarship, Germany kind of adopted Shakespeare as their national poet in the 19th century. And in fact, some of their tercentenary celebrations led to the founding of the Royal Shakespeare, the Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon. In fact, there are even phrases in the early 20th century that England needed, if Wagner had Bayreuth in Germany, Shakespeare deserved his own version of Bayreuth in Stratford. And so they created that partially in response to the Ring cycle. And that's like actually real. What I have here is the very famous Schlegel-Tieck translation of Shakespeare's plays, a complete edition of all of Shakespeare's plays translated into German, something that Schlegel had started long before the 1820s. But I just wanted to point out that this is the first volume. The first two or three volumes, in fact, include Shakespeare's history plays in the order in which they were printed in the first folio. The history plays were the most important plays for Germany because they embodied a kind of national past, a shared national past that Germany lacked in the 19th century. And so they foregrounded the whole series of 10 history plays. And in fact, in 1864, I believe, they mounted a production of the 8 history plays that have generally contiguous events. So from Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, the Henry VI plays, and Richard III. They mounted them all in one weekend, which is common. The Royal Shakespeare Company does this now. You can see all 8 plays in a single weekend, but Germany did that first, and England only managed that early in the 20th century. And the idea that Shakespeare's history plays could be separated into 2 major tetralogies, or series of 4 plays, that also comes from the Ring cycle. No one ever thought about Shakespeare's plays in that way, as a continuous performance that's simply broken up by plays. It was never performed as such until after the Ring cycle was completed. So there you go. Some German Shakespeare, centennial German Shakespeare for you. König Johann, the version of King John that we have there.
To anybody who was interested in that discussion of the Q brothers who are bringing Julius Caesar to campus here in the fall, I tweeted out a link to their homepage if you want to figure out more. So you can just look at our Twitter, which is Special Collections, UI Spec Call on Twitter, UISPECCOLL. Just checking in on our feeds. You can keep your questions coming, although time is short. Our stream continues for another 39 minutes, so get your questions in now to be sure that they'll be answered. We're taking questions on Twitter and on our the comment portion of our live stream feed.
I'm going to bring out one more book, and then I have another question from a long time ago that I want to get to. I'm going to talk a bit about the first folio, since the first folio is coming this fall to all 50 states, where you can bow down in front of the altar as it's opened to a single page from Hamlet. You can probably guess which one, and pay your respects to the dearly departed Shakespeare. What I have here is a facsimile of the first folio published by Yale University Press in 1954. This is a copy that's in Special Collections now because I found several facsimiles on the open shelves over the summer, and I thought that this deserved to be in Special Collections rather than checked out. So if you've ever seen a copy of the first folio, even if online, you might notice that this is reduced. They've reduced the size of the first folio so that it's more convenient to use. A Shakespeare folio is a very difficult book for us to read and work with, as any large folio volume is. But I wanted to point out, this is actually a quite notorious facsimile of the first folio because it's filled with errors and miscorrections. And if you really want to have some fun reading a review, go back and look up Fredson Bauer's review of the Yale facsimile, called something along the lines of the Yale facsimile and Shakespeare scholarship, or maybe it's just scholarship. I'm forgetting the exact name. Let's see. My favorite thing about this, the preface to this book, it says, for the sake of convenient handling, the size of the original type page has been reduced by approximately 1/5. It's still a big, hefty book. But it allowed people to, facsimiles were produced in order for people to have access to the text of the first folio once the first folio itself became so expensive. So to ensure maximum readability, stains have been removed whenever possible without interfering with the text itself, but no other retouching has been undertaken, which is not exactly right, I have to say. But again, go read Fredson Bauer's. Here's my favorite part. Liberal outside margins have been provided for the reader's notes, and a paper suitable for writing in ink has been used. So you can see there's some healthy margins there. So they envision this book being used by either active and attentive readers who are interested in Shakespeare, or Shakespeare scholars who want to access the first folio text. But I also think, like, a paper suitable for writing in ink, you can't write on a first folio, but you can write on these pages. And so to my mind, this gives you the possibility of desecrating a precious first folio while the real thing remains locked away in the libraries of institutions and wealthy book collectors.
I think that's the perfect segue for one of our remaining questions.
Yes.
Which comes from Sarah Warner. It's the question we mentioned at the beginning that was aimed at you. How much do you love the first folio?
And you get to break Shakespeare as often as you like.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm certainly not going to use the word cute when talking when talking about this. How much do I love the first folio? Let me count the ways. That's it.
Aww.
No, I have a very complicated relationship with the first folio, and because of the importance now attributed to it, so that we think that it's often said that the first folio is the most important book in the English language. The Bible is also important too. At the very least in English literature, and it features in narratives, critical and historical narratives about Shakespeare as the moment that changed everything. The moment Shakespeare becomes literature, Shakespeare becomes an icon, and it's so much more complicated than that. And so instead of detailing that, I will just point you to a book recently published that features a chapter about the first folio. I won't name the book or its author, but he's sitting next to Colleen Tyson at this table. The second part of the question.
It's into the third hour.
So the second part of the question is much more interesting, and that's about breaking Shakespeare. And I'll give just a moment our copy of the second folio of Shakespeare out, because quite famously, if you know me, because I talk about this all the time, the first time I took my class to special collections when I got hired at Iowa, we popped the front board of the binding off of it, and so the conservation
Late
team.
19th century binding.
Late
Yeah.
19th century binding.
It's the 19th century's fault. It's
Yeah,
not your fault.
I know, yeah.
Thank you.
It had it coming, really. But the idea of breaking Shakespeare apart, not only, I mean, literally that has been the case, because there are many, many fragments of first folios that are completely uncatalogued, and even the recent census of first folios, they only count a copy of the first folio as being 50% complete. And for a long time, incomplete copies were ripped apart to be sold separately or to perfect other copies. In special collections, we have a copy of the play King John taken from a second folio. So we have the same play in two different copies that was acquired at some point. If you think about the ways people read Shakespeare, for quotations and quotable bits, that's a different part of breaking Shakespeare apart. I will say, do we get to break Shakespeare apart as much as we'd like? Not so much, but I will say that just outside the door, our undergraduate librarians have set up a table with a cheap facsimile of the first folio, in fact, a copy of this, cheaply produced in a paperback, for people to rip out pages.
Which is already trying to break itself apart.
And do some redaction poetry. And so I'm just going to rip this is my own copy, not the library's copy. This is a good page. So just rip this out. There's your catalog of plays. Does anyone have a pencil I can use? Let's add in comedies, Love's Labor's Lost. Let's add in Love's Labor's 1.
Do you think we could get a little closer on this?
Excellent.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, oh, purple Sharpie is even better.
Love's Labor's 1. In fact, we'll get rid of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh.
Sorry, Love's Labor's 1 instead. This actually happened in the 17th century because Troilus and Cressida was a late addition to the first folio, and so there are copies where early owners have written in Troilus and Cressida. Oh, let's see. Titus Andronicus. We'll leave that one. We'll just call this play Juliet,
Yeah.
because that's what it really should be called.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to adapt Julius Caesar and make it a lot shorter. It's already a short play. Let's just go for the death of Julius Caesar. Yeah, let's get rid of Antony too. Cleopatra. Let's adapt this play. Let's go Cymbeline, Queen of Britain. What else do we want to get rid of? I almost want to get rid of King John because no one likes that one.
I know one friend who really likes
I'm
it.
going to keep that one.
So fewer people.
Let's get rid of the Tempest. But let's keep the T. It's a pretty T. A catalog. Yes. All is well. Let's just go all is well. The Taming of Petruchio. It's much better.
So any of you who are tuning in from campus, we have pages available here in the Learning Commons. And if you'd like to give this a shot and make a new creation out of the copies of the origin pages, we'd be happy to tweet out and feature your work online.
Yeah.
SHX Live, we're still taking questions for a few more minutes.
Not all of these seem to be comedies to me, so let's scratch that out. Just plays. That's probably enough for now. I'll keep working on this, I promise.
Great, we're going into the last half an hour.
Oh, let's do one more, just for the heck of it. Let's go for broke here and just break Shakespeare once and for all.
So we have turned the corner into the last half an hour of the live stream. The first folio is being torn apart. Ask your questions. Oh, you've gotten a hearty no on our comments feed. I suppose that is why there are multiple copies, multiple purposes.
It's not real, it's a facsimile, but I'm just saying there's a good reason they're keeping that thing behind a glass case when it comes to Iowa City.
Facsimiles are also very important for studying, but it's your book and you can do what you want with your copy of your book.
I don't like that facsimile anyway. I won't rip the page of this one, I promise.
Yeah, let's switch gears and move things. Can we briefly check in with Heather?
Yeah.
Yeah, you made me do a double length one, so. But it's coming along.
That's true. We'll just keep it here for now. Safely ensconced.
Yeah, you're lucky. If this had been like one line longer, I wouldn't be able to fit it on my paper.
Oh, perfect.
Because I ruled it for a regular sonnet, and this is the weird amalgamation.
So you've got sonnet 73 and 77 all put together there.
Yes.
We have someone asking us online if they need to run immediately to get a page or if they'll be available afterwards. If you would like to work on a page of the first folio, well, they're available right now, so you're welcome to run and get one, but it is a busy time of year. They'll continue to be available in the Learning Commons, and if they're not just out here in the open area right by the orange rooms, then you can tweet us. I'll hook you up. At the service desk. We will have them at the
Or
service
you can get in
desk.
touch with me. I have my own copy. I'm happy to have people rip it out.
And you can tweet him at Adam G. Hooks. and he'd be happy to rip a page out for you.
Is there any redactions?
Not yet.
Do we have any other questions?
Let me check in. And then we have been joined by our last guest as well. So we've got just a little bit more time to answer up your last questions. And then we will wrap up and look towards how we are commemorating Shakespeare. So that's been one of the themes here in our live stream today. We looked back to 1916. We looked through different times and how the idea of Shakespeare was created through some different works, recreated, reinterpreted by actors, reinterpreted as maybe fan fiction, question mark. In these last few minutes of the live stream, we'll be turning towards an extension of how we commemorate today, which would be also related to the first folio. Okay, the last check-in for new questions. Did you have any more that got skipped, Adam?
I don't think so.
I need to check in on the live stream page, and then we may be ready for our guest.
Waiting in the wings.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good when you're ripping a book apart to have as many librarians in the room as possible.
It's your book, that's different. Okay, well, we seem to have answered the questions that we have in our stream. We've got Heather just finishing up the last lines of Sonnet 73 for Megan. And do you think we're ready?
You want to bring in our special guest?
Yeah.
Guest?
Rolling in. There.
Hi,
How you doing?
good.
You survived.
We're in the last
You're still
20
conscious.
minutes of our 3-hour live stream.
Fabulous. Can't tell from your faces.
Would you like an introduction?
If you'd like to provide one.
Hi, Internet. This is Greg Prickman, head of special collections and creator of many fabulous things.
Such as the Atlas of Early Printing.
So they say. Hi there. One of the other things that I've done is I was somehow elected as the person to lead the University of Iowa effort to bring the first folio here during the Folger Shakespeare Library's commemorative tour of 2016. And so we will be having the book, capitals, all caps.
A copy of
Yes,
the book.
a copy
One
of the
copy.
book. That Adam does not own.
And therefore,
and therefore
will be treated very differently.
Yes,
Multiple copies for multiple reasons.
that's exactly right. That's why we have big glass cases as well, right?
That's right.
That's right.
And a guard.
And a guard. It's okay. You'll probably enter the gallery and your eyes will droop, right? So, here at Iowa, we'll be hosting the first folio from August 29th to September 25th. And in the midst of that time, we will be hosting a variety of events. And this is a calendar that is blossoming continually, and will continue to do so. But what we thought we would do today is at least get a few dates down for people to keep in mind. Oh, wow, look at that typo. As they are planning for that 4-week period. So what we're thinking about here is folio will be with us for 4 weeks. We have an exhibition that Adam is working on that will feature other books from special collections.
Some of which we saw today.
Exactly. And those will be in the exhibition gallery along with the first folio. So for 4 weeks, the folio will be here. Then that exhibition will continue beyond the time the folio is here. So we'll keep things going for a while through the fall. And I think the events will likely continue beyond that 4-week period as well. But needless to say, that will be a time of intense activity. So we're going to start off, if everything is installed according to all of the standards by which we adhere in time, we're going to start off on Sunday, August 28th with a preview event for library supporters and donors. And that will give us a chance to bring some people in to see it and make sure everything's working the way it should. So that's how we'll get started. The following day, the first day that the exhibit is open, August 29th, we will have a grand opening reception that will be free and open to the public. All of this taking place in the main library on the University of Iowa campus in Iowa City, Iowa. And the gallery's on the north side of the building, if you're at all familiar with the main library. So big grand opening reception, there'll be all kinds of fun going on. Then the next significant date that we have in mind right now is September 18th. And that is a Sunday, and we're going to spend the whole afternoon throwing what we're terming a family festival on the plaza that's right outside the north entrance of the main library. If you're familiar with the area, it's a big open brick plaza. So our intention is to, and it's kind of our intention for the whole exhibition, is to really focus on some of the strengths here at Iowa, which in particular would be book arts and book history. So we're going to bring in all of our friends from the Center for the Book, and we're going to be making paper. We're going to be printing things. We're going to be binding things. You'll be able to take stuff.
We're going to be writing
you.
sonnets with quills, maybe.
Sonnets with quills. Oh, of course. Look at this. We're already doing that. So we'll do it again. We're going to have performances, demonstrations. The weather's going to be beautiful. I just know it. So it'll be a big open public festival event that afternoon, which will sort of be our big celebratory event. But again, lots of hands-on demonstrations, an opportunity to really see how these materials were created and get to witness that and feel it for yourself.
We actually talked about materiality in the live stream today.
Yeah.
Or they did. I had stepped out. But it's great to have that hands-on focus.
We are going to be embracing materiality.
And if it rains, I'll just take my folio facsimile outside and let it drown, like Prospero's books.
And then we'll do a time lapse of
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I can live stream it.
Undoubtedly, this will all be true. So then the next one is September 24th, right? Coming up towards the end of our run with the first folio. We're going to have another event, an Elizabethan dinner / ball / fancy party.
Fancy party.
Fancy party. Time and location to be announced. Probably won't be happening in the library. We'll find some other space for this. So keep your eye out for details about that as the details come together. Those are the main events and the main dates to keep in mind. However, we are going to be announcing a lot of other events. We're going to be doing things like, I don't know, trying to find a prominent Shakespeare scholar, maybe one who's written a book about Shakespeare and printing. Maybe could do a lecture.
Fritz and Bowers is dead.
Oh
So.
man, what are we going to do?
Find one.
How? Wait, Adam, could you do that?
Do I get to rip something while I'm doing it?
No, it's your show.
Excellent.
All right. So we'll have that type of event. Bring in some scholars from some of the other schools in the area and have some lectures. We're going to be offering tours, and there will be a mechanism on the website to sign, if you're in a group, sign your group up for a tour. And we'll try to match you up with a curator, a scholar, somebody who can give you a sense of what we have out there and what the context is. So definitely take advantage of that.
You could get a tour with one of us in real life.
In real life. That's right.
For anyone who has just joined us, because it is now 1:15, timing of the live stream was a little tricky. I realized I had to start just a few minutes early from when we said that we would start to announce about the first folio coming here in the fall. That's our hashtag. Please continue to use it. But we have Greg Prickman here, who's been just running down some of the main events that will happen when the first folio visits us August 29th through the end of September. September
25th.
25th. Thank
25th
you.
Officially.
That's what he's announcing.
So if it's 1:15, I will simply recap. How about that?
A brief recap, and then we'll keep going. Also, in the live stream feed, the reason why I wanted to pause is that you can go backwards while it's playing. So if you missed anything, you can watch it right in the live stream feed, and then this is saved as a YouTube video right at the end.
Fabulous.
I'm also going to be pedantic and say that if we're celebrating Shakespeare's death, the Elizabethan dinner should be called
That's exactly
a
right.
Jacobean dinner.
And we may just have to do that.
People always overlook the Jacobean.
Well, maybe this is an opportunity to do something about that.
I think so.
All right, recap. August 28th, Friends of the Library's preview event in the main library exhibition gallery. The following day, August 29th, is the day that the exhibition opens to the public, and there will be a public grand opening reception that evening. September 18th, we're going to do a family festival on the North Plaza right outside the main library, right outside the room where the folio will be on display. And that's going to be a Sunday afternoon, hands-on demonstrations, all sorts of fun going on. September 24th, we're going to have a period-appropriate dinner/ball. How about that?
I like that.
All right.
Fancy party.
Yes, time and location to be announced. And as I was saying, more events will be announced, both here in Iowa City and elsewhere in Iowa. We have some other things going on. We are also going to be benefiting from a lot of our campus and community partners putting on a lot of different programming.
Here's a list.
Oh, we have a, oh, look at this. We have a list.
I also just
Coming
tweeted our Shakespeare website, shakespeare.lib.uiowa.edu.
And that is what you should keep an eye on as all this information goes up online and then, of course, is added to. Some of our partners include Iowa City Public Library, Coe College, Grinnell, Bruce Moore, Salisbury House, Department of English, Theater Department, School of Music, Center for the Book. All of them are going to be partnering with, and more, will be partnering with us on events that will be dispersed throughout Iowa City for sure, but also in other areas of the state. And we, I think, will also be looking at ways to bring some of this content beyond Iowa City as well. That's the plan. Those are, and then I think the key is the URL that Adam just gave you, shakespeare.lib.uiowa.edu. That's where details will be posted in the coming days as the schedule expands. And what our plan is by the end of June to have a full schedule sort of locked in and available to be consulted. Yes.
Dates for the Q Brothers performance of Julius Caesar.
The dates for the Q Brothers performance of Julius Caesar.
So this is the Julius Caesar performance that we had discussed earlier when we were talking about
Hip-hop Shakespeare.
hip-hop Shakespeare's.
And the dates are September 30th to October 2nd, October 5th through the 9th, and October 13th through the 15th. Thank you.
Future undergraduate students of Adam G. Hooks, we will be reading Julius Caesar during that month, just as a heads up. We also have magnets.
We do have magnets.
We have
some left.
Shakespeare's
They're going
End.
fast.
And you can't do anything to it. I mean,
Well, without a sharp object. If you're coming for a folio page, ask for a magnet too.
Yeah, and the magnet has the dates that the first folio is here.
Indeed.
awesome. I think Heather just finished her song. Let's take a look.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, over here. Yeah, that's fine. Oh,
There
she
you
was
go.
like mad to finish it at exactly 1:20, 10 minutes before we finish up this live stream.
There you have John Benson's poem Sunset, including sonnets 73 and 77, written by Heather. Beautiful, beautiful.
In a adapted secretary Gothic hand.
Gothic cursive, yeah.
Gothic cursive. Okay.
Great job,
We hear
Heather.
the great sigh of relief from the 3-hour calligraphy section that we all got to witness right here. Thank you, Heather. And I'm sure our two online contributors, I can't pull up their names right now. It was Megan and I'm sorry, I forgot, who got their personal requests of sonnets 105 and 73 calligraphed on the spot.
Awesome. So since Heather is removing her liquid materials from the table,
Let's clear.
we can get out some space.
No, let's clear, clear.
Since we are celebrating Shakespeare's death in a variety of different ways. Here is our copy of Shakespeare's second folio, the very one that my students broke. The conservators,
conservation lab then repaired.
exactly, the conservation lab then prepared, then repaired, and then also prepared this special box to house our copy of the folio, so that it never has to leave the box, so that no one can break it. Presumably.
Well, those bindings break all the time.
Yeah, late 19th century.
So here you go. We have Shakespeare's book in Shakespeare's box. And since the first folio, and by extension the second folio, is a commemorative book, it claims to give us not just the text of Shakespeare, but the body of Shakespeare. I'm calling this box the coffin for the rest of 2016. It can go back to being a box in 2017, but here's Shakespeare's coffin for Shakespeare's body, his corpus of literary works. The title page here, I'm not going to rip this one, but it's in bad shape because it's a fake. It's a facsimile. It's a much later facsimile produced, as are a few of the other preliminary pages before we get actual copies from actual pages from 1632. So talking about materiality, the first time I saw this, you could tell simply by touching it that the paper feels a lot differently than, say, the first page of The Tempest, which is it's a little bit stained, it's a bit rough looking. They've altered the layout of the catalog here. It's kind of stains all over the place. So it wasn't always housed in this elaborate red Morocco gold tooled Riviere binding, which is one of the reasons I didn't mind breaking it so much. But nice page. Much Ado About Nothing, someone mentioned online, was their favorite play. Much Ado About Nothing, the word nothing may have been pronounced a bit more like nutting or noting. So it's possibly a pun. Much Ado About Nothing, or is it Much Ado About noting people, like looking at people, interpreting people's actions and behavior? So whoever it was that loved Much Ado About Nothing, there you go. So there's our beautiful coffin that will close back up. Goodbye. Good night, Shakespeare.
All right, so we got a chance to look at the second folio quick as one of the last things for today. We're just in the last few minutes of our live stream. We're going to wrap up now. Thank you to everyone who submitted your questions. The outpouring of questions this year was just really fantastic to see, and I hope that you got all of your questions answered. I hope you got to hear a few interesting things about Shakespeare. We got all of the updates about the first folio coming here in the fall. Adam, do you have any wrapping up thoughts?
Good night, Shakespeare. Have fun in your tomb. We will not disturb your bones, unlike some of the people that we've talked about in the last 3 hours. So thank you all for joining. If you ever have a Shakespeare question and you want a real Shakespeare professor to answer it, Adam G. Hooks, you know where to find me.
And Greg, do we have any final announcements or thoughts about the first folio coming here in the fall?
Keep your eye on the website.
Keep your eye on the website. I just tweeted out that link from UI Spec Call as well. And any of these items, as we have in years past, we will continue to tweet out links to the books that we took a look at today, websites and references to a lot of the things that came up in conversation today. But if ever you want to see any of these materials, anyone can come to Special Collections. Stop by and ask for some of them, and we'll be able to help you take a look in the reading room here at the University of Iowa. And any questions you have, the live stream is a great opportunity to get them answered live. But we're here, and we'll continue to be here, and Shakespeare will continue to be the conversation as we head into the fall with the exhibition opening.
Excellent.
Okay, so I think that that's what we have for today.
Thank
We're
you.
not going to be live anymore after we push this button. We will be.
Eating lunch.
Oh, okay.
We had so many elegant ways to end, and
Yeah.
it's 3 hours in, and I.
Yeah.
Mhm. Bye, friends.